The snow fell thick and silent that December morning, covering the world in a blanket of white that seemed to erase all sound, all movement, all hope. In the heart of the Appalachian forest, where the trees grew so dense that even sunlight struggled to reach the ground, a small form lay motionless against the trunk of an ancient oak. She was barely visible beneath the accumulating snow, just a shivering bundle of matted fur and protruding bones. Her name was Bella, though no one had spoken it in weeks. The family who had brought her to this desolate place had driven away without looking back, their car disappearing down the mountain road as she howled after them, her cry swallowed by the vastness of the wilderness. The days that followed were a blur of cold and hunger. Bella had tried to find her way back to civilization, but every path looked the same. Every direction led deeper into the forest. She had eaten what little she could find, snow for water, bitter roots that made her stomach ache. Her paws were raw and bleeding from walking on frozen ground. Now, as the winter solstice approached and the temperatures plummeted to dangerous lows, she had simply given up. She curled into the smallest bowl possible, conserving what little warmth remained in her failing body, and waited for sleep to take her. But before you think this is where her story ends, let me tell you about Thomas McKinnon, a man whose own life had been defined by abandonment and loss. A man who was about to discover that saving another's soul might be the key to saving his own. Thomas had lived alone in his cabin for 7 years, ever since the accident that took his wife and daughter. He had been driving that night, distracted for just a moment, and in that moment, everything he loved had been ripped away. The guilt consumed him like a slow-burning fire, and he had retreated to these mountains to escape the world, to punish himself with solitude. He worked as a lumberjack, his days filled with the rhythmic swing of the axe, the crack of falling timber, the blessed exhaustion that kept the memories at bay. People in the nearby town whispered about him, the hermit on the mountain, but Thomas preferred it that way. He didn't deserve companionship. He didn't deserve peace. That morning, Thomas was checking his trap lines, a routine he followed even though he rarely caught anything worth keeping. The forest was his cathedral, silent and judgeless, and he walked through it with the heavy steps of a man carrying an invisible weight. He almost missed her, almost walked right past the snow-covered mound that didn't quite match the landscape, but something made him stop, some instinct he thought he'd lost years ago. He brushed away the snow and found her eyes, barely open, filled with a pain he recognized instantly. She didn't try to run. She didn't have the strength. She just looked at him with an expression that said everything words couldn't convey. Please, help me. Don't leave me here to die. Thomas felt something crack inside his chest, something he thought had turned to stone long ago. He gathered Bella into his arms, shocked by how light she was, how her ribs pressed against his palms like the bars of a cage. He wrapped her in his coat and began to trek back to his cabin, moving faster than he had in years, whispering words of comfort he wasn't sure she could hear. Back at the cabin, he built up the fire until the room blazed with heat, wrapped her in blankets, and tried to coax water into her mouth with a dropper. She was too weak to eat, too far gone, the vet would say later, to have much chance at all. But Thomas refused to accept that. He had failed to save the people he loved most. He would not fail this innocent creature who had been thrown away like garbage. For 3 days and nights, Thomas barely slept. He stayed by Bella's side, warming her with his own body heat, feeding her small amounts of broth, talking to her about everything and nothing. He told her about his wife Sarah's laugh, about his daughter Emma's love of butterflies, about the guilt that had eaten him alive for so long. And somewhere in those dark hours, as he fought to keep Bella breathing, Thomas realized something profound. The accident hadn't been his fault. The counselor had told him that, the police report had confirmed it, but he had never believed it. Yet here he was, fighting with everything he had to save a life, the same way he had fought that night, the same way any loving husband and father would fight. He hadn't been negligent. He hadn't been careless. He had simply been human, caught in a moment where fate made its own terrible choice. On the 4th morning, Bella lifted her head and licked Thomas's hand. It was a small gesture, barely more than a brush of her tongue against his skin, but it felt like absolution. Over the following weeks, as winter deepened its grip on the mountains, Bella grew stronger. Her fur regained its shine, her eyes their brightness, her spirit its joy. She followed Thomas everywhere, through the forest as he worked, around the cabin as he cooked their meals, into bed at night where she curled against him, two broken souls keeping each other warm. Thomas found himself laughing again, actually laughing, at her antics when she discovered her first squirrel, when she tried to catch snowflakes on her tongue, when she insisted on stealing his socks. Spring came eventually, as it always does, melting the snow and revealing the world beneath. Thomas stood on his porch one morning, Bella at his side, and looked out at the forest that had been his prison and his sanctuary. He realized that isolation hadn't been healing him, it had been slowly killing him, the same way it had nearly killed Bella. That afternoon, he drove into town for the first time in months, Bella riding shotgun, her head out the window, ears flapping in the wind. He stopped at the community center and signed up to volunteer. He visited Sarah's parents, something he'd been too ashamed to do for years, and wept with them, finally allowing himself to grieve properly, to remember his family with love instead of guilt. The years that followed brought changes Thomas never expected. He started a program rescuing abandoned animals from the forest, giving them the second chance Bella had given him. He fell in love again with a veterinarian named Claire who understood that healing isn't forgetting, it's learning to carry your scars with grace. And through it all, Bella remained by his side, growing gray around the muzzle, moving a little slower, but never losing that spark of gratitude in her eyes, that joy of a soul that knows what it means to be truly saved. On the 10th anniversary of the day he found her, Thomas and Bella returned to that ancient oak where their story began. He knelt in the summer grass and held her face in his hands. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for showing me that being saved and saving others are really the same thing." Bella licked his tears away, and in that moment, Thomas understood the profound truth that had taken him so long to learn. We're all just looking for someone who won't abandon us in our darkest winter, someone who will wrap us in warmth and whisper that we're worth fighting for. Sometimes we're the one who needs saving. Sometimes we're the one who does the saving. And if we're truly blessed, we get to be both. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever felt abandoned or found redemption in an unexpected place, please share it with someone who needs to hear that hope survives even the coldest winters. And remember, there are countless Bellas out there right now, waiting in the cold, praying for their Thomas to find them. Consider supporting your local animal shelter, volunteering your time, or simply opening your heart to a creature who has nowhere else to turn. Because the truth is, when you save a life, you're not just changing their story, you're rewriting your own.